for those radio waves to be refracted or reflected back down to the earth so that it can do this thing, which is called skip, it has to go through that D layer. If the D layer absorbs it, nothing gets through. So you're just sitting there, you may be talking on the radio, and it goes up and it hits that D layer, and that's where it stops. Nothing happens. Now, there's a thing called sporadic E. Sporadic E is pretty much the same thing, only it reacts differently. A cloud gets ionized, and it may be as big around as that table, but then again, it may be as big around as this building or even larger. And sometimes it could last for minutes, it could last for days. Days, maybe a lot of hours. But, so what happens is it ionizes that E layer cloud, and then your signals can bounce off of it. I've worked 6 meters during a geomagnetic storm into England because it was a sporadic E connection that also hit the F layers and so on and so forth. So you get a long distance. Normally sporadic E is only good for about 1,300 miles. But when you've got something that goes all the way over to England, you have several different things that's going on there. Is Space Weather Live going to tell you all that? Nope. But what it will tell you is if you have an issue where you're not getting any signals at all, then I'll guarantee you that you go out to Space Weather Live and this whole right side of that screen will be, instead of green up top, it'll be orange, yellow, or red, and it'll tell you that there's a type 2 radio emission going on, which means radio blackout. And it will show you, for instance, this is the auroral oval. During that blackout we had, this was all red, a red circle right over the United States. Meaning anything within that red circle is not going to get HF propagation, period. And that's exactly what happened. I wish I'd have taken a snapshot of it, but I didn't. But this page will tell you those things. I want to relate a story to you that I started on. In March of 1940, the United States had one of the biggest geomagnetic storms that they have seen in a long time. How many of you remember the 1989 Canadian power blackout?
Not here, but
it was. Not here, you're right. But it was in the northeast and the southeast portion of Canada. It knocked them out for, 4 hours, I think? Well, in 1940, it was very strong. Telegraph operators were getting 600 to 800 volts of electricity at their stations. Not good. Can you imagine if we had that kind of stuff going on today? Because back in those days, nobody knew what a transistor was. Very, very, very possible that a lot of things could be different. But back in those days, their power lines were mainly regional. So let's say from maybe here to Kansas City or whatever. Their communications lines spanned states. But they were all long wires, grounded. The power grid was regional. It didn't pretty much go beyond, maybe a couple of states, maybe, but mainly bigger towns. So it didn't really affect them that bad. But when you say this, I'll pass this around. This is a 1920 to 1940 vintage lightning arrestor. the reports from the newspapers and from the different, you know, news agencies said that when they interviewed the people at the different places where they were having these 600 to 800 volt voltages at their terminals, said these things broke. Okay, what does broke mean? You got a radio that's broke, okay, something inside is not working. One of these breaks, that's what it literally means, it breaks. Because it's ceramic.